This happened quite a while ago, back when I was 22. Enough time has passed that I finally feel safe sharing it. I was fresh out of college, with a great job offer and barely any expenses since I was living at home with my parents. Imagine that, saving a ton of money without worrying about rent or groceries, all while enjoying my childhood room, my car, and all the comforts of my hometown. I was truly living the dream. I knew how lucky I was. Not everyone gets that kind of support, so I never took it for granted. But even with everything going right, not everything was perfect. What I'm about to tell you happened less than a month after I moved back home. I've never been what you'd call a party girl. I don't binge drink, I don't spend my weekends in clubs, and I definitely don't let men control any part of my life. That's just how I was raised. My father is the most important man in my world, and I've always been disgusted by hookup culture. So, my life was simple. Wake up, drink coffee, go to work, hit the gym, read, mess around on my phone, and go to bed. Weekends were for hiking, board games, little road trips, whatever I felt like. Then one weekend, my closest college friend, Kelly, invited me and our two other friends, Emily and Vanessa, to stay at her family's beach house for a few days. I'd never been, but based on the way Kelly talked about it, the place sounded like paradise. Quiet, private, far from tourist chaos, right on its own beach, and only a short walk from the water. Kelly's family is extremely wealthy. I think both her parents are neurosurgeons. So I figured the house would be something out of a movie, and I was right. When we arrived, I was stunned. I'm no architect, but I know modern design when I see it. Kelly's house looked more like a top-secret government facility than a vacation home. I'd love to show you pictures, and I have plenty, but even if this story never happened, it would still feel disrespectful to share them. Out of respect for Kelly's family, I won't. We unpacked and chose our sleeping arrangements, although there were enough rooms for each of us to have our own. We decided to stay together in a kid's room with 2 sets of bunk beds and a private bathroom. We'd been there 3 nights already, which is honestly the perfect amount of time to spend with friends, just long enough to have fun, not long enough to get on each other's nerves. I'm pretty particular about cleanliness and manners, so I can get irritated easily. Not that my friends aren't great, but still, you know how it is. Even though I usually live a low-key life, if there was ever a time to loosen up, it was this trip. So, I drank more than usual that weekend. The first night, we kept it relaxed. We walked to the beach, sat on the sand, and stared up at the stars. The 4 of us sipped White Claws while house music played from Vanessa's speaker. That's when we saw it, a faint, flickering light further down the shoreline. We stopped, talking, and watched it swing side to side, like a flashlight being carried. It soon became clear that someone was walking toward us. Then we realized it wasn't just one person. It looked like a group of 3 or 4 people, walking slowly in our direction. We heard laughter, which made us relax a little. They sounded like people our age, maybe just some local teens or other vacationers. One of them, a guy, shouted hi, in a friendly tone. Vanessa called back, and we made small talk as they approached. It turned out to be 3 guys, probably just a year or 2 older than us. They had that classic beach guy look, and I could immediately tell my friends were into it, especially Vanessa. She's always had a wild streak when it comes to guys, which I've never been a fan of, but it's just who she is. They joined us with their beers, and we all kept drinking and chatting. It was actually a really fun time. The guys weren't overly flirtatious, just laid back and interesting. After a while, they invited us back to their place. I was exhausted by then and planned to head to bed anyway, but the others clearly wanted to keep hanging out, especially Vanessa, since there were 3 guys and no real reason for me to tag along. I decided not to spoil anyone's fun. I told them I was calling it a night and headed back to Kelly's place while the 6 of them walked further down the beach. I got ready for bed and passed out, but sometime after 3 a.m. I was jolted awake by a FaceTime call from Kelly. It made no sense. She should have either been asleep or still out with the others. I answered groggily, and her panicked voice shocked me fully awake. She was screaming that Vanessa and Emily had been kidnapped and begged me to grab her car. It was like a bucket of freezing water had been dumped over me. My heart was racing. I threw on clothes, sprinted downstairs, and asked why she called me and not the police. She told me she had already called them. She needed me to help find the car before it got away. She stayed on the phone with me, guiding me through everything. How to open the driveway gate, where the keys were, and what direction the car had gone. She said it had passed about 10 houses down the beach, heading left. I jumped in, floored the gas, and started hunting for it. The roads were empty. I was flying way over the speed limit, and honestly surprised I didn't get pulled over. Eventually, I spotted a car that matched the description moving slowly up ahead. I hung up with Kelly and called the police again to give them my location. The dispatcher told me to hang back and not alert them, so I followed from a distance. After what felt like an eternity, I saw flashing cop lights ahead. The SUV didn't try to escape, probably thinking it was just a routine stop. I pulled over and watched as chaos unfolded. The police pulled all three men from the car at gunpoint, cuffed them, and hauled them back to the cruisers. Then they opened the trunk. Vanessa and Emily were inside, bound, bruised, terrified. What happened after that, their version is even more horrifying. All three of them are still close friends with me, and they were okay with me writing this, but none of them wanted to tell it themselves for good reason. After I'd gone home, they kept drinking. Kelly didn't drink much because she felt responsible, since it was her family's house. At one point, the guys suggested heading to bed. Vanessa and Emily went off with two of them, while Kelly told the third she was going home. He got mad. At first, Kelly thought he was just upset she wasn't hooking up with him. She told him she might have been interested, but she wanted to be responsible. That made him explode. He shouted at her to leave, so she did gladly, but halfway home, she realized she'd left her purse. When she went back to get it, she saw the guys shoving Vanessa and Emily into the back of their SUV before driving off. She called 911, then called me. It turns out, the house those men were using didn't even belong to them. It was owned by some elderly couple vacationing overseas. Add that to a long list of serious crimes, and those men are in prison for a very long time. Vanessa's parents are both lawyers, and they fought to make sure the case stayed out of the public spotlight while also ensuring the men got maximum sentences, and they did. I was traumatized for years. I avoided beaches, strangers, late nights. I stopped being social and even distanced myself from the girls for a while. It's better now, but I'll never forget how close we came to losing everything. And the scariest part, if I hadn't gone home early, Lindsay's car might have been out of reach. And if it had been, who knows if the police would have ever found that SUV in time. This happened a few months ago during spring. It was that weird transition period in my life. I'd just graduated, had no real responsibilities yet, and way too much free time. I had finished school a semester early, which sounded great when I was buried in assignments. But once I actually had the time off, I had no clue what to do with myself. My full-time job wasn't starting until June, and most of my friends were still caught up with their own classes and exams. So until then, I was just floating, feeling stuck between two chapters of life. It honestly made me feel useless. I'm the kind of person who always needs to be doing something productive. And just sitting around day after day was slowly draining me. That's probably why I said yes when my mum asked me to check on my Uncle Omar's beach house. It was a simple task: drive down to Rehoboth Beach, make sure nothing was broken or leaking, and do some light maintenance to save him from having to hire someone. I live in Pennsylvania and the house is in Delaware, so the drive was just over 2 hours. The place is massive, the kind that comfortably fits our whole extended family every summer. Around 25 of us pack in, playing games, drinking, and making noise all night. Honestly, that's kind of our thing. The house isn't right on the shoreline, but it's close enough. It sits in a quiet neighborhood with tall beach grass and winding streets. Skip ahead to some random weekday. I think it was a Thursday. I left in the late afternoon, which I now realize probably wasn't smart. The drive was smooth, and when I arrived, everything seemed totally normal. I went inside and went through Omar's checklist. I checked the faucets, flipped the breakers, walked around the property. All was fine, but something felt off. Being in that house alone was weird. I'd never seen it empty, no board games, no loud relatives, just silence. And the silence, that was the creepiest part. It made the whole place feel abandoned. You know that feeling when a place that's usually full of life suddenly feels dead? Yeah, it was like that. It was getting late, and I really hate driving in the dark, so I texted my mum, told her I'd stay the night, and she agreed. She also reminded me to thank Uncle Omar, which I did. I made myself some food, scrolled through my phone for a bit, then started getting ready for bed. Normally, I'd be stuck in one of the smaller rooms on the 3rd floor during family visits, but this time, the house was all mine, so I claimed the 2nd floor master bedroom. It had a private bathroom, a giant walk-in closet, and the softest bed in the house. I got into bed around midnight and passed out quickly. I don't remember what time it was when I woke up, just that something had startled me. I was still half asleep, but I was completely sure I'd just heard something inside the closet, like something fell over. I turned my head toward it, and even that made my heart race. My brain was alert, but my body did not want to move. It wasn't exactly sleep paralysis. I could move, but I was too afraid to. I didn't want to know what was in that closet. I shut my eyes tight and told myself to fall back asleep, and I almost didn't till I heard it again, a low, muffled thump. From inside the closet, I opened my eyes just a sliver and tried to convince myself I imagined it, but I hadn't. Suddenly, I was frozen for real. My entire body refused to move. It was actual sleep paralysis this time. I couldn't shift or twitch if I tried. That was the first time I truly understood what it meant to be locked in your own body. Then the closet door slowly creaked open. Through barely open eyes, I saw a dark figure step into the room. It just stood there beside the bed, completely still, watching me. Maybe 20 seconds passed, maybe longer. Every second felt like forever. Then, without making a sound, it turned and walked out of the room. I didn't move a muscle. I barely even breathed. I waited for the footsteps to go downstairs, but they didn't. They went upstairs, to the 3rd floor. My stomach dropped. There was no exit up there, just bedrooms. My mind screamed for me to move, but I was frozen in fear. I had no idea if the man was armed, no idea what he wanted. All I could do was wait. After a few agonizing moments, I forced myself out of the paralysis. Quietly, I grabbed my phone and called 911. I whispered as softly as I could that someone was in the house. Then I slipped out of bed and gently locked the bedroom door. Then I waited. Minutes crawled by until I finally saw the flashing lights of a police car outside. I ran downstairs, flung open the front door, and nearly collapsed in relief when I saw them. They rushed in without hesitation, sweeping the house quickly, but they didn't find anyone. I was in shock. I heard him go upstairs. There was no way he left without passing me. But the police insisted. I was just too scared to notice him leaving. I knew that wasn't true, but what could I say? He was gone. I wasn't okay with just letting it go, so I called Uncle Omar. He lost it. He shouted at the cops, told them to search the house again, and made it clear they might be risking my life if they didn't take it seriously, so they searched again, this time thoroughly. They had me follow along as they opened every closet, looked under every bed, tapped on the walls, pulled shower curtains back, and double-checked every door and window. That's when they found it. One of the bedroom windows on the 3rd floor of the room I should have been sleeping in was unlocked. One officer stood guard while another went down to the backyard deck. I followed him. I couldn't bear the idea of staying inside any longer. He scanned the yard with his flashlight. Nothing. Then he aimed the beam toward the roof and my heart stopped. He was up there, the same man I'd seen beside my bed. A filthy, bald man in ragged clothes, looking like he hadn't bathed in years. He was just sitting up there on the roof, like none of this mattered. The next hour was chaos. The police worked together, got him down, and arrested him. They said he was likely homeless and had been squatting in the house for days, maybe longer. But when they asked him how he got inside, or why he was hiding in the closet, he didn't say a word, just stared blankly, like none of it mattered. He was taken away in a police car shortly after that, and that was that. I still can't make sense of it. Maybe he heard me come in and panicked, hiding in the closet. Maybe he'd already been living there for a while. What still haunts me is this: if I'd chosen to sleep in my usual bedroom on the 3rd floor, I don't think I'd be here telling you this story. My friend Daniel has a beach house on the Jersey Shore. Calling it a beautiful property would be an understatement. It's stunning, at least to someone like me, who didn't grow up with much. That's how it felt. I don't know the full history, since it's not my family's house, but from what I've been told, it's been in Daniel's family for generations. Daniel's grandparents had hoped to make it their permanent home, but they both passed away recently. Now, with no one living there full-time, the place usually sits empty. Most of Daniel's relatives live on the West Coast, and his parents are too busy to make much use of it. The silver lining is that Daniel can basically use the house whenever he wants. I think his dad planned to rent it out for extra income, but that hasn't really materialized yet. Renting a beach house during the off-season isn't exactly easy. It was sometime in mid-July when Daniel asked if I wanted to head down for the weekend. He didn't need to ask twice. I had nothing going on, and the idea of relaxing at a beach house sounded perfect. His plan was simple. We'd chill, maybe hit the beach during the day, and walk the boardwalk at night, just an easy escape from our usual routines. I was genuinely looking forward to it. Daniel and I live close to each other, so he picked me up that Friday. I packed a duffel bag, tossed it in the trunk, and we were off. We got to the house around 6 in the evening. After dropping our stuff in the upstairs bedrooms, we settled in. The place had that classic beach house smell: salt air and aged wood. It wasn't bad though, it smelled like history, like years of summers spent there. After grabbing sandwiches from a nearby sub shop, we took a walk on the beach. Daniel had brought a couple fishing rods, so we cast a few lines. We weren't expecting to catch anything. It was more about being there, soaking in the atmosphere. At one point, we ran into two girls about our age, walking barefoot along the shore. Daniel, being who he is, immediately struck up a conversation. They were local, or at least somewhat localard. We ended up having one of those casual, slightly flirtatious beach chats. We exchanged numbers and went our separate ways. Even though it was peak season and people were everywhere, Daniel knew all the quiet spots, hidden paths, private beach access, those places where city lights don't quite reach. We found a peaceful stretch of sand with just the sound of waves and wind around us. For a little while, it felt like we'd left the real world behind. The next morning, we were up by 9 and decided to jog along the boardwalk. It was already warm, but there was a good breeze coming off the ocean. We didn't go far, just enough to shake off the sleep and feel alive. Daniel is pretty active, and I've been trying to stay fit too, so it felt good. The rest of the day passed by without much notice. By evening, Daniel suggested we hit a few bars in Seaside, but honestly, we were both exhausted. The idea of crowds, loud music, and long lines didn't sound appealing. We ended up turning in early. Sometime after midnight, I woke to an ear-splitting beeping. At first I thought I was dreaming, but after a few seconds I realized it was real. A alarm blaring through the house. It sounded like a smoke detector, the kind that drills into your skull. I jumped out of bed and tried to figure out where it was coming from. It wasn't on the second floor. After focusing harder, I realized the noise was coming from above. Without thinking, I threw open my door and rushed to Daniel's room. I shook him awake, and as soon as he realized what was happening, he got up and followed me without even grabbing a shirt. We bolted up the stairs to the 3rd floor, not knowing what to expect. The hallway was mostly dark, lit only by a bit of moonlight sneaking in through a small window. We turned the lights on and scanned the area. No smoke, no heat, no burning, smell, nothing. It was baffling. After several frustrating minutes, I found it in one of the bedrooms, tucked under a pillow. It wasn't a smoke detector. It was a small, black device, about the size of a walkie-talkie. It had a blinking red light on top, a smooth surface with no labels or buttons, just one tiny switch on the side. I flipped the switch, and the beeping stopped instantly. Daniel came into the room just then and stared at the thing in my hand. We both looked at each other, completely confused. I asked if he had ever seen it before. He said no, I hadn't either. For the next hour we tried to figure out what the device was, how it got there, and why it went off. Nothing made sense. Daniel swore no one from his family had been in the house for a long time, and I believed him. Who would plant something like that in their own home anyway? It couldn't have been for safety. There wasn't any fire. It didn't serve a purpose, except to go off in the middle of the night and scare the hell out of us. But the most disturbing part came next as we sat in Daniel's room trying to make sense of it. A terrifying thought hit me. The switch. I picked up the device again and flipped the switch on and off. Sure enough, the alarm blared and stopped with each flip. We froze. Only way to activate the device was by hand. Someone had been in the house with us. We didn't hesitate. Daniel called the police while I locked the door and shoved furniture. In front of it we sat in silence, waiting. Eventually, the police arrived. We rushed downstairs to meet them and explained what had happened. The officers did a full sweep of the house. When they came back, they told us something chilling. Every single window on the 3rd floor had been opened. Even the small bathroom ones. Not just that, furniture had been flipped, drawers were pulled out, and the room where I found the device was totally ransacked. But we'd been up there earlier, and everything looked fine. The officers didn't find anyone. No signs of a break-in, no prints, no weapons. After about 20 minutes, they advised us to lock the windows from now on and to call again if anything else happened. Then they left. We didn't feel safe. Someone had clearly been in that house with us, and probably for a while. We had no other option but to stay. So we did, locked in, anxious, waiting for morning. Luckily nothing else happened, but there are parts of that night that still haunt me. Whoever that person was, wherever they went afterward, we'll never know. For all we know, they may have never left.